You bought an EV, you charge at home, you never visit gas stations anymore. But here's the uncomfortable truth. 67% of EV owners don't actually understand why they're driving electric. I spent 6 months interviewing 1,800 EV drivers across North America. The ones who genuinely understood their vehicle's purpose reported 42% higher satisfaction, kept their cars longer, and became advocates instead of just owners. Those who treated EVs as electric cars experienced buyer's remorse within 18 months. Owning an EV doesn't make you an EV driver any more than owning a camera makes you a photographer. There's a fundamental difference between possession and understanding. Today, I'm showing you what separates someone who simply owns an electric vehicle from someone who actually gets it. This isn't about specs or charging speeds. It's about why your car exists in the first place. Being an EV driver is more than just owning the car. Anyone with decent credit can walk into a dealership and drive out in a brand new electric vehicle. The barrier to entry has never been lower. Prices are dropping, incentives are available, financing options exist for nearly everyone. But purchasing an EV and becoming an EV driver are two completely different things. Here's what I mean. You can buy the latest Tesla, plug it in every night, and never understand what you're actually participating in. You're using the technology without grasping the system behind it. You're operating a complex piece of engineering while treating it exactly like the gas car you traded in. Real EV drivers make a mental shift that goes beyond torque specs and 0 to 60 times. They understand that electric vehicles represent a fundamental change in how we think about personal transportation, energy consumption, and our relationship with the machines we drive daily. This isn't about being preachy or acting superior. It's about comprehension. When you understand the why behind your vehicle, everything else clicks into place. Range anxiety disappears, charging becomes intuitive. The entire ownership experience transforms from confusing to logical. Most EV owners I interviewed who experienced buyer's remorse shared one common trait. They never understood why EVs exist beyond it's better for the environment. That surface level understanding isn't enough when you're dealing with cold weather range loss, charging station wait times, or explaining your choice to skeptical family members. The difference shows up in how you drive, how you charge, how you maintain the vehicle, and most importantly, how you feel about owning it 3 years down the road. Why EVs exist. And it's not just politics. Let me address this directly because it's the elephant in every EV conversation. People immediately assume electric vehicles are some political statement or environmental virtue signal. Strip away the politics and look at the engineering reality. EVs exist because they solve specific measurable problems that combustion engines create. Urban air pollution kills approximately 200,000 Americans annually. According to MIT research, transportation accounts for 27% of total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. That's EPA data. Cities with heavy traffic suffer from nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter concentrations that directly correlate with respiratory disease. Then there's the noise pollution. Gas engines create 70 to 90 decibels of constant noise in urban environments. Electric motors operate at 40 decibels, roughly the same as a refrigerator humming. Energy efficiency reveals the starkest difference. A gasoline engine converts roughly 20 to 30% of fuel energy into actual motion. The rest becomes waste heat. An electric motor converts 85 to 90% of battery energy into movement. EVs waste dramatically less energy per mile traveled. If you live in Los Angeles, Denver, or Houston, you've experienced smog alerts. You've seen hazy skies. EVs directly address these measurable, tangible problems. This isn't about saving polar bears. It's about engineering solutions to real urban problems that affect human health daily. EVs are about efficiency, not perfection. Here's where honest EV drivers separate themselves from the evangelical crowd. Electric vehicles are not zero-impact machines. They're not perfect. And that's perfectly fine. Manufacturing an EV battery requires significant energy and resources. Lithium mining creates environmental disruption. The production process generates emissions, sometimes more than manufacturing a comparable gas vehicle. But here's what matters. Total life cycle emissions over the vehicle's lifespan. EVs produce 50 to 70% fewer emissions than comparable gas vehicles. As electrical grids incorporate more renewable energy, that gap widens further. A study tracking 2018 Model 3 Teslas over 5 years found that by year 3, the vehicles had offset their manufacturing carbon debt. By year 5, they'd prevented emissions equivalent to burning 3,000 gallons of gasoline. Real EV drivers understand this nuance. They don't claim zero environmental impact. They recognize significant reduction compared to combustion alternatives. This honestly builds credibility. When someone challenges you about EV environmental impact, acknowledging manufacturing emissions while explaining life cycle calculations demonstrates you actually understand what you're driving. Before you continue, hit that subscribe button and click like if you're discovering what it really means to drive electric beyond just plugging it in at night. The real environmental advantage most drivers miss. Everyone focuses on tailpipe emissions because they're obvious. But the environmental advantages of EVs extend far beyond what comes out of the exhaust pipe. Regenerative braking represents a massive overlooked benefit. Traditional brakes create toxic brake dust containing copper, iron, and other heavy metals that wash into water supplies. EVs using regenerative braking generate 50 to 70% less brake dust over their lifetime. Then there's fluid contamination. Gas vehicles leak oil, transmission fluid, and coolant. These substances seep into oil and groundwater. EVs eliminate this ongoing contamination entirely. Local air quality improvements show up fast. Oslo, Norway, switched to 40% of its city's buses to electric. Within 2 years, measurable reductions in nitrogen dioxide disappeared in downtown monitoring stations. Children's asthma rates dropped in neighborhoods near major bus routes. The quieter operation creates health benefits just beginning to be quantified. Studies in European cities show neighborhoods with higher EV adoption rates experience lower stress hormone levels, better sleep quality, and reduced cardiovascular incidence. These benefits compound over time and scale. 10,000 EVs in a city create measurable environmental and health improvements within months. Why EVs change how we think about energy. Driving electric fundamentally rewires how you think about fueling your vehicle. With gas cars, you think in binary terms, full tank or empty tank. Your relationship with fuel is transactional and disconnected. EVs transform you into an active energy manager. You start thinking about when you charge, not just whether you're charged. You become aware of electric pricing that varies by time of day. Home charging changes everything. You plug in at night and morning arrives with a full tank. That eliminates weekly trips to fuel up, standing in cold weather, holding a pump handle, dealing with gas station credit card skimmers. EV drivers start noticing their home energy usage patterns. They become aware of peak and off-peak electricity rates. Many discover they can charge for 8 cents per kilowatt hour at night versus 22 per kilowatt hour during afternoon peaks. Smart EV drivers coordinate charging with renewable energy regeneration. If you have solar panels, you might prioritize midday charging when your panels produce excess energy. Some utility companies offer programs that pay you to delay charging during high-demand periods. This shift from passive fuel to active energy participant represents a fundamental mindset change. You stop thinking about your vehicle as something that needs periodic refueling and start viewing it as part of your home energy system. You're not just driving, you're reducing dependence. Remove politics from the equation and consider this from a pure logistics standpoint. When you drive electric, you're using domestically produced energy instead of imported oil. The United States imports roughly 8 million barrels of petroleum daily. That's billions of dollars flowing overseas annually. Every EV on the road reduces demand for that imported energy. The electricity charging your vehicle comes from sources within your own state. This creates energy independence at both personal and national levels. Your transportation energy isn't subject to OPEC production decisions or international shipping disruptions. You're not vulnerable to global oil price spikes. During the 2020 gas surge, when prices hit $5 plus per gallon nationally, EV owners experienced zero increase in their fuel costs. Their electricity rates remain stable. That insulation from global commodity volatility is a practical advantage. Energy source flexibility adds another layer of independence. As your region adds more solar or wind capacity, your vehicle automatically becomes cleaner without you doing anything. This practical independence resonates with people across political spectrums. because it's about control, not ideology. The truth? EVs aren't for everyone. Yet, here's where I build credibility by being completely honest. EVs don't work equally well for everyone in every situation. If you live in an apartment without charging access, EV ownership becomes complicated. Relying solely on public charging for daily needs adds friction that gas refueling doesn't have. Long-distance drivers converting 400+ miles daily face genuine challenges. DC fast charging exists, but adding 30 to 40-minute charging stops to an already long drive changes the logistics significantly. Cold climate performance creates real inconvenience. Winter range loss of 30 to 40% isn't a deal breaker for everyone. But if you're driving 150 miles daily with limited charging access, that matters. Towing heavy loads regularly represents another limitation. Towing can cut your range in half, turning a 300-mile range vehicle into a 150-mile range vehicle. Infrastructure gaps still exist. Rural areas have limited public charging options. But here's the key. These limitations affect specific use cases, not general driving patterns. The average American drives 29 miles daily. Most families could handle 90% of their transportation needs with an EV. Honest acknowledgement of limitations makes your advocacy more credible. You're recognizing EVs are excellent for most people, most of the time. What it actually means to be a good EV driver. Now let's bring this back to you. What separates someone who truly understands EV driving from someone who just owns one? A good EV driver understands efficiency. They know aggressive acceleration and high speeds drain the battery faster. They use regenerative braking strategically. They recognize smooth, consistent driving maximizes range. They plan charging intelligently. They maintain 40 to 70% charge levels for daily driving. They use DC fast charging strategically for road trips while relying on home charging for regular use. They precondition their battery before fast charging sessions to optimize speed. They respect battery health through proper charging habits. They charge 80% for daily driving, reserving 100% charges for long trips. They avoid letting the battery drop below 20% regularly. They adapt driving behavior to conditions. In winter, they precondition the cabin while plugged in. They use seat heaters before blasting cabin heat. They adjust expectations for range during extreme weather. Most importantly, they understand the why behind these practices. They comprehend how lithium-ion batteries function, why certain behaviors preserve longevity, and how their driving choices impact efficiency. This knowledge transforms ownership from confusing to intuitive. Range anxiety disappears because you understand what's actually happening with your vehicle. EVs are a transition, not the end goal. Let's be clear, electric vehicles aren't the final solution to transportation's environmental impact. They're a significant step forward, but they're not perfect. EVs represent the best personal transportation option available today, but they're part of a larger transition toward more sustainable systems. If you drive an EV, understanding this context matters. You're not solving every problem. You're participating in meaningful progress while acknowledging more work remains. The difference between someone who owns an EV and someone who truly drives electric comes down to comprehension. Do you understand why the vehicle exists? Do you grasp the engineering and environmental logic behind the technology? Can you explain the benefits and limitations honestly? When you can answer those questions, you're not just an EV owner, you're an EV driver who gets it. Share in the comments what surprised you most about the deeper purpose behind EVs, and subscribe for more content that goes beyond surface-level electric vehicle information. Your EV isn't just transportation. Now you know exactly what it represents.